we speak to Thembisa Fakude, who's Director at Africa-Asia Dialogues, for more. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, the bloody war between South Africa and Rwandan-backed M23 rebels has now become a war of words between President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Rwandan counterpart, Paul Kagame. What is your take on the situation?
There's a lot to say, but first of all, President Cyril Ramaphosa has been embarrassed and to have been made to look very weak. And his response, typical President Cyril Ramaphosa, has been that of trying to extend an olive branch, even though I think this time around South Africans and the world, in particular, at least Africans, expected him to be much more firmer to Paul Kagame. The post on social media last night from President Paul Kagame was laced with arrogance and total disrespect for President Cyril Ramaphosa. And I think what is happening at the moment, at least the reasons given by Paul Kagame on why he supports, I mean, he tacitly basically accepted that he supports M23, even though he continues to deny, is that he's there to protect the Tutsis. It's the same reason that's been given by Vladimir Putin, by the way, in Ukraine, that he went in there to protect the Russians. Imagine if you can have King Mswati and Basotho coming to South Africa to protect the Basothos of Free State and Mpumalanga. So this
doesn't make sense.
Could introduce chaos. Could introduce chaos in international politics. So it simply doesn't make sense. This is a man who's hell-bent at creating havoc in Africa, particularly serving interests of foreign countries in Africa. We see him doing the same in Capital Gawi, the province of Mozambique. So Paul Kagame has to be stopped in his tracks. And as some people have said, including some of the former members of the South African Defence Force, that the Zimbabweans did push M23 and the Rwandese military back when they tried to do similar thing in the past in the DRC. So we expect President Cyril Ramaphosa, the leader of not one of the most important and powerful country militarily and economically, South Africa, to act much more firmly and take his position as a leader in the continent and be firm to President Kagame. But what we see happening is him continue extending an olive branch and hoping that President Kagame will accept it and change his style of politics.
Yeah, because President Kagame appeared to be largely annoyed by the South African government's repeated claims that Rwanda was supporting the M23 and that the M23 and Rwanda had precipitated the latest fighting by attacking the SADC mission in the DRC. And he also showed a bit of annoyance when South African officials are describing SAMI DRC as a peacekeeping force. Where lies the grey area? I mean, what is the bigger picture here? What are we missing?
Well, all of these forces that they are sanctioned by SADC and the United Nations. So they are there, of course, not to battle and fight against Rwandese troops, but they're there to try and maintain a semblance of stability, but importantly, to protect the assets and interests and the people of the DRC. But what we've seen, of course, is that M23, which is not bound by the rules of engagement because they're a terrorist organization. They come in and they do as they please. And Rwanda, who happen to be a country that's supposed to adhere to international law, of course, they won't openly come in and attack. So they use M23 to pursue and advance their objectives inside the DRC. And what we've seen today, of course, and the reports that have been coming, is that this is the force that has since been well equipped with very sophisticated weapons, and some people are arguing that some of the weapons are similar to those that are used by the Israeli Defense Force or the Israeli Army and the United States Special Forces. So you can see now that there are other players that have since joined the fray, and this is likely to escalate if it's not stopped at this point in time.
With President Kagame accusing President Ramaphosa of lying and the distortion and issuing a veiled threat of military aggression, you are recommending that President Ramaphosa must take a more firmer approach. What would it sound like in terms of just, getting back his credibility? Because, I mean, you speak about an embarrassing situation here.
Well, it's not only me who's saying that. Former military top brass of South Africa calling on Cyril Ramaphosa to take a much more firmer stance, because our people have been killed in the DRC.
Yeah.
Any other country at the moment will be panicking and visibly irritated by what has happened. But what we see a president that's very calm and continue want to negotiate, notwithstanding that we've got these rogue players in the DRC supported by Rwanda who continue to kill and threaten our interest in killing our people. So we're supposed to be having a firm position. We're supposed to be having a message to Paul Kagame that's unequivocally stating that South Africa is not going to tolerate this kind of a behavior. And it's Cyril Ramaphosa supposed to be reading the riot act to President Kagame, not the other way around. But what we've seen an absolute arrogance, statement laced with absolute arrogance from Paul Kagame. And President Cyril Ramaphosa since said nothing, but as the leader of South Africa, he embarrasses all of us. And it becomes very difficult to justify why is South Africa acting in the manner that is acting in the DRC, notwithstanding that there is a very, very high price that we continue to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion.